This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about inclusive learning, empowering special needs families in homeschool co-ops. And I have a returning guest, Dawn Jackson. Dawn, I'm so happy to have you back again. And thank you for taking this very last minute invite from me. But Dawn is an educational consultant and learning specialist. She's certified special education teacher with a master's in special education, certified in learning styles as a learning styles coach and a certified health coach. Dawn is the owner and director of Solimar Academy, a program for students who think outside of the box and for parents who want to support a system for curriculum, tutoring, parent education, and consulting, and collaborative and proactive solutions in coaching their child. She also offers coaching for co-ops that are interested in creating environments that welcome and support students with disabilities, and is in the process of creating an online program to do that. And I think all of that has come to a head and has you thinking a lot about this, and I'm super excited. But Dawn is going to share some really, really practical tips with us today, and I just can't wait to do that. So welcome back, Dawn. Nice to have you on the show again.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm just so privileged to be here, and I just love your work and all the people that you have on. They're amazing, and thank you. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Yes. So you had a little story for me as we were sharing kind of behind the scenes in the green room before we went live. And we are live, by the way. I know I see you people popping on. If you have questions and comments, some of you sent them ahead of time. We're going to make sure we include those in the conversation as well. But if you have some about co-ops, experiences, things you want to share, just please put your comments, your questions in the feed. We would love to include those in the show. We know sometimes this is kind of a hurting situation for some of you, and I want to come out ahead of time and say, I get it. We were asked to basically leave a co-op after my son was asked to leave kindergarten. It's not always an easy road to find community. But yet there are people that want to, like Dawn, to create those environments, to help other people create those environments so that you have the ability to find community that's supportive. So yes, I would love, Dawn, for you to share a little bit of that story with us of how you kind of started this passion growing in you to start helping co-ops create these environments that are for families that have kids with disabilities at homeschool.
Yeah, so as you all know, I come from the background of working in special education in a public school and then a charter private school now. And so I have several years experience, but one of the things that I have heard over the years, and specifically, is that a lot of families, parents with children with disabilities, feel like they have no place for them. There is just no place where they fit in. And even though I would encourage them, join a co-op, join a group. Well, we've tried that. It doesn't work. So you have to think about that, right? Like which part is not working?
Right.
Is it really the child, or is it the situation? It's kind of like learning styles. Is it the teacher or the way the teacher's teaching,
Right.
And so the thing that I realized recently, it was just kind of a God thing. Honestly, it was. Everything is in my life a God thing. I was listening to this podcast. It popped up on my phone. I don't even know where they came from. And I think I was checking them out one day, and then there they were, and they were talking about starting a co-op. And I thought, well, maybe that sounds really fun. Like maybe that's something I should do, but make it specifically for kids with disabilities. So they would have, a place where they can come and feel invited. But my thought was, I don't want it to just be like that. I want it to be for all children, but with a knowledge and an awareness of some of the things that we have to think about, right?
Right.
Some of the
Yeah.
things we have to be intentional about, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because I ended up talking to those ladies that had that podcast, and they came alongside and coached me. And so they essentially told me, no, you shouldn't have a co-op. And I'm like, what? How dare you? And so it was like, you should help people who have co-ops to figure out how to support families that have children. So shortly after that, one of the ladies reached out to me who had a co-op, and she said, I think you could help us because we just lost a family that, her kids both had ADHD or whatever their diagnosis was, and they came in and had to leave because they didn't work. So she said, I think you would be a benefit to us to teach us how to do this. And so that was really when I thought to myself, that's easy peasy to me. Create an environment that works for all children, right?
Right.
Not for everyone.
Not for everyone. No, you're right.
Yeah.
That is very correct.
When I homeschooled my children, we were in co-ops, and you didn't see kids with special needs diagnosed with any diagnosis in those settings.
It has changed. The homeschool landscape has changed a lot.
Right.
We're seeing people come in and, and we saw the shift. It was just a little bit before COVID, maybe a year or two, but instead of people coming in for conferences, saying, well, I've got this child that kind of struggles and what do I do? And now people are handing me diagnoses and saying, what curriculum should I use with this diagnosis? And we're like, whoa, hold back.
Right.
But now there's even curriculum for diagnoses. I mean, that has, in the last 20 years, it's just been amazing change. But it's, it hasn't always been that way.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a whole nother topic. I have to
Yes, it is.
That's so that's kind of where it brought me to this place of really like sitting down and navigating that and maybe creating a course. For sure, I want to create a course around it so people can have at their fingertips, any kind of information that can support them or even coach and help them. And so that's where my heart is, and we'll see where all that leads. But hopefully today I can at least give some real, concrete ideas.
Right.
How you can change that landscape even further and that environment for the better for all children.
Yeah. And this is going to be helpful too if you're just a parent. And you can come in and say, these are some things that I really need from a co-op. And you can almost, I would encourage you to interview co-ops before you join and see how willing they are to maybe accommodate before you get in and just say, well, why didn't you accommodate? Because some will and some won't. And so having that conversation, and I think that's kind of what you wanted to get started on too, Dawn, was that conversation. Can you dive into that and how important it is and who it's important for too?
Right, exactly. So I think that if anyone were to say, what would be the first thing we have to do? I would say the first thing you have to do is make a connection with the parent. The parent or the grandparent, whoever is bringing that child, you have to know the story of who that child is. You have to have some kind of information. One of the questions I asked this person was, do you have a questionnaire that you give to your parents? Some history on who that child is? And she said, no, we don't. Well, right there, I think that would be the very first thing I would create and can create for you is a questionnaire of the pertinent, important questions to ask about a child. Another thing I was thinking about is if the child has an IEP from a previous school, sometimes it's a good idea to even look at the accommodations. You don't have to read everything. I don't even think it's always a good idea to know all the ins and outs of all the scores and this and that, because sometimes it limits us in our
that is true.
Who that child truly is. But having this accommodation sheet is very important and it could help you. So you can also ask that. I'm sure the parent wouldn't mind sharing that. But the other thing I want to really make aware to everyone is that when parents decide to homeschool their child that has some diagnoses and that has been going through this since the birth of that child, this is really hard. This is a really like traumatic experience that they've had.
Mhm.
And there's nothing like going, okay, all the dreams and visions that I've had for my child no longer are real.
Mm.
This is what's real. And
Right.
they're on a daily basis trying to navigate that and make
It's a grieving process for a long time until you can come around and kind of see how God is
yeah,
moving in that, and that takes a long time.
I love
But
that.
it's grief every day
Right.
otherwise.
And so
Mhm.
if you can come in with that compassion, knowing that this
Right.
mom has felt alone maybe for a really
Mhm.
long time, obviously, maybe the public school has not come alongside as she hoped. And now she's deciding to do this on her own. This person needs a coach. This person needs a friend
Yeah.
and someone that maybe can be designated. So I'm trying to say, like, look at the parents that are like support people in your group and
Mhm.
see if there can be some specific people that have been through similar things and now can
Yes.
decide and be a coach and put an arm around that mom and say, we understand, like, we
Mm.
understand what you're going through and your pain. I worked in a program as a director of a special education charter school, and that was one of the things that parents would say to me is, you make us feel seen, you make
Mm.
us feel held. Because even though I didn't have exactly what they went through, I went through my own struggles
Hmm.
with a child
Mhm.
that I couldn't figure out how to help and figure out right how to reach that child.
Right.
And I felt very much alone in that
Mhm.
and didn't even know how to ask the questions, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even know how to ask for what we need,
Yeah.
but we can tell the story. And it's the story, I think, that really matters. I
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
sounds trite, but it's really important. That story is so beautiful, and it's so beautiful to God, and it should matter
Mhm.
to us. Even if you're just like, well, I'm just the person teaching art. It matters.
It matters. It truly does. One of our viewers on YouTube said, "Absolutely right, spot on." Um, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
it is so true. We feel that. And she also followed up. She said, "I tried to put my son in school, and they told me that he has so many needs that he should be in a special school." And I was in that same situation. I knew my son was gifted. And yet what the school could do for him wasn't adequate. And so you bring him home knowing it's the right thing to do, but it's like, I'm just surviving every day, and now I've got to find community. I've got to create my own community because
Right.
and it's a tough struggle. I mean, I was talking with Heidi St. John last week about in community and the importance of it. And so this is a really great follow-up this week
Mhm.
because a lot of times we leave with the question, that's great that I need it, but now how do I get it? And yeah.
Let me speak to the other side of that now
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
person that's running a co-op or the group that's running a group.
Mhm.
So you're probably saying, well, this child has too many needs and they don't fit into this situation.
Right. The same as the school would say. Yeah.
But the problem with that thinking
Mhm.
is that it's conditional thinking.
Yeah,
It's
so much
built
so,
on
yes.
expectations that are not realistic for any child. The
Mhm.
purpose of a co-op is for community, is for celebration of what we're learning and why we are here. If you
Mm.
have a little guy sitting in the back doing a squishy ball during the whole lesson, and that's all he does,
Mhm.
it matters.
It does.
He's
Yeah.
there. I'm getting chills.
Mm.
He's there. He's gleaning. He's building
Yeah.
relationships. He's being seen.
Yeah.
He's seeing the world around him and how people are. I'm still gonna cry now. It's a big thing for me. And being a child that never felt seen.
Yeah.
That was my story.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so it's really important to
It
me that
is.
kids are seen. And
Yeah.
even though he's not sitting there doing the pen and paper thing, if you're doing too much pen
Mhm.
and paper, you're doing too much pen and paper because
Right.
not all
So
kids
true.
do that. And I'm going to get off on
No.
my trail and learning styles and all that. But I'm just saying to the person, don't worry about that. That doesn't matter. What matters is that they're there. You have a mommy there that needs to be loved, that needs to be cared for. Her heart is precious. She's been
Mhm.
through trauma. She's still in trauma. and to come alongside and be a hero in the lives of that family, to say, our arms are wide enough. God's arms are wide enough.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
pretty cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, and so true. And there's so many grandparents now too that are homeschooling, and they had never seen themselves in that situation, that they would be raising their grandkids and homeschooling them. And so that's a whole nother dynamic, and being able to accept them as grandparents versus, well, you're not the parent. And so how do we
Right.
fit these people into this co-op? Just kind of be thinking outside the box to all of these situations that come about, that you can really show a family love.
You can.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it is love. And you don't have to have all the answers. Now, I would say there are some things to be aware of, like we're going to talk about today, that
Mhm.
can make this process go smoother. One, the very first thing is love the parent or the person in, that's bringing that child.
Mhm.
Second is lower your expectations. Stop thinking everything has to look like one way. And I'm coming from a
Yeah.
teacher. As a teacher, and I'm telling you, when I became a teacher of kids with learning challenges, that's when my whole life changed. And I thought, how do you reach them? How do you connect? How do I connect with them? How do I
Mhm.
build intrinsic motivation so that they'll want to learn, they'll want to show up with everything they.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
that's the thing. If we're thinking about the long-term goal, like what is the long-term goal? That they finish this piece of paper
Right.
and they write their name and they answer all the questions correctly, or that there is a hunger built within to continue learning, to learn about
Right.
learning and to learn about
Mhm.
thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a completely different shift to, let's just get through this curriculum versus let's prepare this child for life. It's it's very different, and to have those long-term, long end goals versus just the short-term daily and weekly, out to the end of the year, and then you're off to a new teacher and you're off
Right.
somewhere else. Um yeah, that child is a person. and and no matter what setbacks they have, um yeah, they're going to achieve where you set their goals for them. And yeah, that's
I did think
so
of
very important.
this other idea that, so think about this. You have a parent, she signs up, I'll teach the math class, so she
Mhm.
comes in and teaches a math class, and all of a sudden there's little Sally there who's, I don't know, throwing pencils or jumping on the desk or whatever.
Mhm.
She's thinking, I didn't sign up for this. What my thought is that those teachers, those temporary teachers that come in and volunteer to do a class, they need a support system in place.
They do.
So,
Yes, very
so
much so. Because they were not taught how
right.
to teach other than just they have a passion to teach, and you
Yeah,
wanna encourage that passion, but
absolutely.
you definitely have to have create a system to keep that
Correct.
in place. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there isn't gonna be a lot of gifted teachers coming into your co-op. There's a lot of parents who want to serve,
Exactly.
and yeah.
But they don't
Mhm.
have those experiences and they don't know, and it
Right.
may feel very awkward for them. And, I
Mhm.
know sometimes people feel awkward if there's a child in a wheelchair and they
Mhm.
don't have speech or language, and, they're only typing or their thoughts. But how do you engage with them? Right? All these
Right.
nuances, these little tiny things. And I'll just say to you, if that's you today, be yourself. Be like
Mhm.
you would be with any child,
Yeah.
because they are any child.
They are. Yeah.
Even though they have this special situation, they are any and every child.
Yeah.
So, if you would hunch down and kneel down beside their wheelchair, then do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
I remember days of riding on the back of wheelchairs. I was young then, but those were the good old days. Let's go for a ride. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think
So
like the overall
right.
people in charge need to have these systems and this awareness and this intentionality in place.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
we aren't just going week by week and saying, "Oh, that's great. Well, we made it through the week, and now, Just no, you got to plan out further ahead. And I think that's good for the overall health of the co-op in general, anyways, not just for creating support systems for families that are bringing in kids with specific needs or learning challenges, or maybe even behavioral challenges, which a lot of people don't see as, when a child, like for my son, it was sensory issues. But of course, how he protected himself when the sensory issues got overloaded was he would just lash out. Well, then they saw it as a behavioral issue instead of the sensory issue. And so again, that's where that training comes back in place. But yeah, there's just so many things. So as far as let's go through some things that like some tips, helps that can happen in both the classroom as well as maybe even the overall space of where you're meeting to kind of help create that environment that you were talking about.
Okay, that's awesome. Yes, environment is huge and it's important for every child, but especially kids that are dealing with some internal challenges or physical challenges, obviously. The one thing that I like to do is think about it, like you were saying, sensory, like having, and this can be for any child, seriously, you don't have to go, well, that one goes back there. A sensory space for that child, or a place, it can be inside or outside, where they can go when they're overstimulated or overwhelmed, or there's too much information coming in all around them. Where can they go? Where can they go to be quiet, to kind of self-regulate, right? Well, not kind of, but to self-regulate.
Absolutely.
There can be maybe a space in the back. I know when I was a teacher, there was always a space for movement, because I did a lot of movement classwork with kids. That let's go back and get out the jiggles. It was called a brain break or a movement break. Really essential. And again, I keep saying all children, but especially children, not even especially. I really believe this for all children. I do.
Yeah, I do
and
too.
So I don't want to separate the two, because they really go together. And that's the problem that we have, is we see the separate thing, like, oh, how do we do that? Well, we should be doing that for everyone. Your child can get up and come to school with a bad day. Do you want to go over there and sit and color? Do you want to go over there and do some squishy balls, or do some circles with, slinkies or whatever?
Well, and you just don't know how kids that we call normal, how they're dealing with some of those stresses that a lot of them internalize them, or have, some coping mechanisms that maybe aren't as productive as they should be. And so you're helping them without really understanding how you're helping them, but still you are. And so I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
Intentional about creating some things. So some of the things that I first like to say is be aware of the environment. One, are there weird smells in there? Are there weird sounds? How about the lights? I cannot tell you how many years I taught with the lights off, because I believed that there were kids in that room that could hear that little tiny sound in that light, and I couldn't, but they were being impacted by it. And when I turned it off and put a lamp in the room and had soft music playing and just created this beautiful atmosphere with plants and artwork, they were so calmed by that environment. It's really important that we take note of that. So if you see a child beginning to kind of get agitated and through movement or sounds or whatever they're doing, take note of what's going on in that environment. Is there a weird noise outside? Is there, like I said, the lights bothering them, or the smells in the room? Those are things that you can control.
Yeah,
and you can
absolutely.
Control that.
Even if you're renting a space, you can, like you said, turn the lights off. That's just not using something you've been given. You can always rearrange the room, put it back into place before you leave. I mean, yes, it may be a little more work, but the payoff and the lessening of the struggles you're going to have, it's so much worth it.
Exactly. So even like when I think about smells, don't do candles, don't do scented candles. I will highly recommend you don't do that. But you can do some essential oils like lavender.
Lavender, yes.
I know there's another one too I wrote down. It's like, I always use lavender, because lavender is gentle and And it seems like a lot of kids really like that smell.
Yeah.
One of the things that this is easy, you can move this from place to place, is having a bin and pre-plan specific tools within that bin. Okay.
Oh, yes.
And I love it. You can call it the happy bin or the quiet bin or whatever you want to call it. You can have manipulatives for teachers. You can have pencil grippers, stress balls, colored pencils, glitter pens, plastic overlays for kids with dyslexia. You can just get colored plastic overlays from the supply store.
Right. Yeah.
And use those in books and over papers. Takes away the glare, and it just makes a calming space for their eyes not to jump around so much. Modify some work ahead of time. One of the things I used to love to do was take a piece of paper and fold it in half, and they just work on one side at a time.
Yes.
Be overwhelmed by the whole thing. You'd probably work floors. Yeah. Even I know all these moms out there are probably thinking about 100 more things that I can't even say. Share those ideas because I want to know too.
Yeah.
And then the big thing is like really always having your glasses on to pay attention when a child is becoming overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Or overstimulated by like sometimes constant chatter, like a teacher's talking too much. That can overwhelm a human. It can overwhelm me. So I turn the podcast off. I'm like, I'm done. I'm good. I've had enough today. But the same thing, pay attention because you can prevent them from hitting a ceiling.
Yeah.
And if you notice that kind of like they're not paying attention and they're looking for something to distract, take them outside for a little walk. Take them outside for fresh air and let's look at the trees and the birds and what's the weather like today? Or say nothing. Sometimes that's even really good. Also that, allowing for frequent breaks.
Yeah.
The smells, we did that. The outdoor classroom, as much as possible.
Oh, yes.
Learn outside. And I will say it again. If you have a child that's like this, while you're over there talking, don't take that personally. I used to say that to people all the time. Don't take it personally. Please don't personally. They're listening. They're taking in what they need to be taking in. Yeah. And you can trust that. I know, but we have to learn how to read and we have to learn how to write. You do, and it will come when they're ready.
That's so true. Yes. And it'll be most of the time way later than you want it to be, but it will happen. But you can't make them stress about it either because that makes it even worse. It actually pushes that timeline back. And we forget that. We forget that other side as we can contribute to the negative end of that as well.
This next one is kind of something I had to learn to do. It took me a lot of years. I'm not naturally organized. I'm naturally curious and I love invention and playing, having fun. So I'm not naturally organized. I don't know if you want to hear that, Peggy, but it's true. But one of the things that I think really helps everyone, all children, is like a wall in your room, a poster or a whiteboard where you place the schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Your kids know what's coming next. Because this also, without knowing this, and review it in the morning. Today, we're going to be doing this for 15 minutes. We're going to be doing this. It sets the stage for what is to be expected versus, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get to go to the bathroom? Am I ever going to get a drink? I'm starving. Am I ever going to get to eat again? And it takes away all that overwhelm of knowing, okay, it's at 11:15, we get a break. Yay. And that's really important. So you can also have a visual wall for like what we call a calming wall too. Oh. So you can use.
What would you say is on a calming wall? What would you put on there?
A calming wall can be so much fun. You can have this, bring it up, put it back every time. You can do this on a big cardboard box or something and just tack it up on the wall. It could have textures on it. It could have photos of things that are calming, like an ocean or animals. I think animals are always delightful to look at. So the purpose of this is, say you're in a room and the mom and the dad is teaching the science lesson and little so-and-so is like, I'm done. My brain's overstimulated. they'll have something to look at and focus on. And it kind of gives them
Mm.
this little dopamine happy hits, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to interject here because this just came to my mind. Something I used
Yeah.
to teach and talk to teachers about, gen ed teachers, was when your kiddo in the room starts reacting, and some kids will talk a lot when you're
Right.
talking. This is like the
Mhm.
number one irritant of everyone, right? Oftentimes, that's not a bad child. That's not a child that's like, I'm just going to talk and I'm rude. And they're not. They're not. What it is sometimes they're overstimulated with
Mm.
all the information that just went into their brain.
Yeah.
Now they need an opportunity to get it out. And that's
Mm.
how they get it out, through their mouth. So I would recommend highly frequent breaks where kids get to look at the other kid and say, tell your friend, your neighbor,
Mhm.
what you just learned. Okay. Which
Yeah.
brings me to another thing, that our kiddos that come into these groups should have a buddy paired up with them immediately. I forgot that.
Mm.
Mom and their child. Sorry, I forgot that. I knew I'd forget that.
No.
And
Well, this is good timing though for that, because I think we're talking more of the classroom environment and the kids.
yeah.
And it is good to have somebody, especially for a child like that,
Mhm.
who doesn't reciprocate all of that. So you have another child who's much more calm in nature,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe who doesn't talk at all because maybe they're a little shy. To pair them up with a child that talks too much is actually, they'd encourage each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
So
so
if you give
great idea.
opportunities for them to talk it out and
Hmm.
to share with their friend, and who cares if they really talk about what they just learned, or maybe they're going to talk about something else, but they
Hmm.
need that opportunity to release that tension in their body. This is a real thing.
Yeah.
Parents, that's for you too, because you might have one of those little talkers at home and you're like, oh my gosh, when's he going to stop? I always wanted my kids to talk. I was the talker. So they were more I'm just going to process it by myself. And I would be like, what happened today? How was school? So opposite. But the other thing I would really highly recommend to the parents is come to school with a binder for your child. So a binder is a place where they can have some of their supplies and the things that they like. Maybe their squishy toy or their fun eraser with Mr. Wiggly on the back of it, or just tissues and the things that they need. A bottle of water. Just that's basic, and we all know that.
Yeah, and everything's accessible, and it's
Yeah.
kind of all in where the child can find it and grab it and use it immediately.
And I love this. I saw this once. A parent did this. They had a picture of the family in the binder. So when they were, separated or in a different space, they always had like a little picture of their mom or their siblings and their dog, things like that, things that were comforting to them. Right. I just thought that was so cute. That's probably a kindergarten thing, but I love it. I would have it. I have it. Hello.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we have it. And so also in that binder can be the schedule cards. And as the schedule is happening, the child can flip the card or move it to the back. And now they know, oh, we only have 3 cards to go. So, and the teacher can even say, move your card back, move your card next. Or she moves the card on the board. That's another suggestion.
Yeah.
Want me to keep going? How are we doing?
Yeah, no, that's really good. But having that communication, like, I think we're going back to almost like systems of the co-op, and having, you have that consistent schedule. Usually every co-op has, this is like first hour, this is where, where everybody is in second. And how can we make that so so that schedule is comfortable for everyone, and that we have enough transition time, and all of those things that 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 we don't often think of. It's just like, oh yeah, that's the way we naturally do that.
One of the things I want to talk about too is, how do we engage that child that's on a different little bit of a track, or is processing differently, or has behavioral issues? How do we engage their mind, right? How do we intrinsically, okay, wait, somebody went away.
Yeah,
but,
no, I'm trying to erase something, but
no
it's not working.
One of the ways that I could get any child to engage, and I used to have this little kindergarten who would like to stand on top of the tables, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get that child on track? How do I bring him back to the group, right? One of the ways is movement. And my favorite, I had two things I used that were my favorites. One was a puppet. Too bad I didn't bring him on here today. He's sleeping in another room. I had this puppet since my daughter was little. I used it in homeschooling with her. And the second thing is a ball. Two really cheap tools you can use. A puppet is great because the puppet can talk to the teacher about, what are we supposed to be doing right now? Oh yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know. I don't think you know because I saw you doing other. So now I'm talking to the puppet. I'm not treating anyone. I'm not, pointing out anyone's name. I am interacting with Mr. Puppet, and I have lamb chop. I don't know if anybody.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I just published an article for the HEAV conference. And I actually referenced that exact puppet because I use that with my son often.
Okay, Peggy. Darn. I wish I would have mentioned that to you. I would have brought lamb chop in. Well, I would love to create like a whole video on how to use puppets because there's such a magic. I have the most amazing stories where kids were like, "No, he's real. No, you can't do that. Lamb chop doesn't like that." And like they were, forget me as a teacher. We had to take care of lamb chop, and what did lamb chop think about how we're learning? And I remember lamb chop telling the kids, "I can't learn my ABCs. It's too hard for me." And the kids were like encouraging him, So puppets are amazing. Balls are fun because you can get the group up where they're standing or sitting and toss a ball and ask a question. And it's quick, right? A song, music, they're finding all this brain information around soul connection, self-esteem, and music in children. If you're trying to get a message to a child, do it through a song. I literally have a sister, she's 60 years old, and she said, "Dawn, if you ever want to tell me anything," because you know me, I'm a coach and I like to tell people things. She's like, "Tell me in a song." So you bet your bottom dollar, I'm looking for songs for her all the time. Like, how would this song
absolutely.
and to her for where she is. And I said, instead of me yakking at her, because she doesn't get it through my yakking. She gets it through music. And so I thought, that's a powerful thing to remember. If you're doing the ABCs, if you're doing, the states, of America, United States of America, memorizing states, do it in songs. Use other modes, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Which leads me to
multisensory.
Because that's where I always go. Your program should have multisensory approaches. You should have the visual. You should have, the kinesthetic, the hands-on, the auditory, minimal auditory, right? Now there's a difference. Like I know in our assessment, we find out if a child is auditory, that's one thing, but they can also be an auditory verbal. I may have shared this with you before.
Yeah.
What's an auditory verbal? Do you know?
I can't. No.
I get to put you on the spot. An auditory verbal learner is one that learns by saying it back out.
Okay.
And hearing their voice say it. So moms, try this at home in your homeschooling to figure out is my child an auditory verbal? If you're teaching them a concept and they're like, blah, 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 chances are they are. So what you can do is say, can you tell me now? Pretend I'm the student. Right. Pretend you're teaching me and you're the teacher. How would you tell me that? And so it gives them that opportunity, not just to talk, right, but to hear it again and remember it. And now it becomes within them and meaningful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I can think of a lot of kids that probably have that label or that learning style, and
it can be annoying. I've had many kids. Many teachers say he belongs in special ed because he talks too much. I don't think so. That's not a reason.
It's just different ways of learning, and and if we don't accommodate them all, and we just don't even know what kids are just barely getting by, that we wouldn't say have a disability, that could benefit from all of those things. And there's so many curriculums now. There's such good curriculum out there that, and a lot of them do provide extras. And
Right.
we sometimes we want to rush through and get, the lesson taught, but the extras are what ground that lesson, and we forget that.
Right.
And
It's so
so, yeah,
important,
so important.
especially with this online learning. And you
Hmm.
guys, I'm sorry. I'm not there is a time and a place for it. And there
Hmm.
are some amazing programs out there. There is a time and a place, but there has to be a balance. If
Yep.
you're just putting your little guy in front of a computer all day, let me tell you, he is not getting a whole lot of that. Very
Mm.
small percentage is he learning,
Mm.
really learning. Real learning comes through experiential
Yeah. Yeah.
experiences.
Hmm.
So, okay, but you say, but I have to work all day and I can't watch him and I can't interact with him. That may be true. But what you could do is figure out, preview what he's learning online and
Hmm.
create some learning opportunities around that. Okay,
Right.
I want to make sure he does have manipulatives. I want to make sure he creates some cards around taking notes. How's he doing thinking maps? My most favorite thing in the whole wide world is a thinking
Mm.
map. And I know not all children are visual learners like that. I've only had a couple in my life that say, I don't like that. I don't like that.
Mm.
It felt messy and overwhelming. So they
Right.
wanted linear notes. And I'm like,
Hmm.
notes? Who does lit? Okay, engineers do lit.
There are some.
And so I had to learn too. I had
Hmm.
lot to learn, even around learning styles. So that's why we like to look at the child's personality as well, not
Yeah.
just how do they learn, but how do they think about
Mm.
thinking? How do they think about learning? How do they think about themselves? And then, of course, that emotional intelligence piece of
Yeah.
knowing, and I think that comes from knowing who you are in God and knowing
Hmm.
who God is. And my most favorite line is God and you are not. And
Yep.
that if you can just rest in that and know that He's got you and He's got this situation, you're
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, over as we get older, we learn more and more how that's true. So I know one thing you really wanted to talk about was games. I want to make sure we hit that, and then we've got some questions from viewers that I want to make sure that we hit on as well.
So what I want to say about games, and I use those extensively throughout my teaching experience, you will never know the
Yeah.
magnitude of the power of playing a game with your child.
Hmm.
It's really sad because we've kind of moved away from that, right? We've moved to the TV or the computer games
I don't
and
know. My kids are all from that gaming generation, so
I
when
love
we get together after Christmas, all we did
it.
was play
Yeah.
games
I
for a
mean,
week.
let's talk about vocabulary, communication,
Hmm.
connection, memories,
Yeah.
right? And then
Hmm.
learning, reading. Oh, I'm
Oh
practicing
yeah.
reading. I'm
Hmm.
reading out loud. I'm comprehending, right? All those
Yeah.
skills, I mean, even if you're doing Monopoly, you're
Yeah.
thinking about money,
Hmm.
how to use money, right? How to
Yeah.
count out things. So the power of games just for critical thinking skills, which
Hmm.
is another biggie in my tool bag that I want to always process. Like I don't talk at kids a whole lot. I'm talking at you guys, but I like to ask kids questions. Well, what do you think about that character? Do you think that's
Yeah.
fair? What does it mean to be
Mhm.
fair? Is God fair? Right? And so
Yeah.
questions lead to questions.
Mm.
Seriously, my children were tormented. Yes. And some of them are still traumatized from the times I would stop the home picked movie and go, what do you think about that character? Is that a good person or what do you think? Where's he going? And can you compare?
Mm.
Mom, can we just do it at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't do it a lot, but I did do it. And because I
Uh,
was trying to capture the moment of the
right.
questions of learning, right? Of values
Mhm.
really mattered about processing, not just taking in information, but thinking about,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to stop because it teaches a habit too for our kids when they're watching movies or reading
Right.
books, to ask those questions, because we've become such an information absorbing
Mhm.
society that we don't ask questions anymore. We just accept everything as true, and we shouldn't. We should say, why is this making me think this way, or is this the way I should be
Can I
yeah,
share my pet peeve to the world?
sure.
When kids go, last pet peeve, when kids go, "How do you spell that?" Or, "What does
uh,
this mean?" Instead of going, "I don't know, you tell me."
mm-hmm.
Or for spelling, what is the first sound that you hear?
Right.
What's the next sound? Even if they get a part of that word,
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking about their thinking. They're thinking about,
Exactly.
"How's this word spelled?" versus, "Just give me the answer." So,
Uh-huh.
as a parent, teach them how to break it down, just like you would,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're trying to spell a big word and you're writing something, you're like, "How do I spell that?" You
Right.
sound it out and you listen
Mm-hmm.
to the pieces and the parts. So, that's kind of a pet peeve I have. I don't know if that was nice to say or not, but I know y'all mean well.
Well, but it does make us think, we because it's the short term versus the long term result. Can we get our kids the answer and give them the spelling? Yes, but long term, what is that going to lead to? It's just going to teach them that I need to just look it up on my phone
Yeah,
versus, can I think critically?
yeah.
That critical thinking.
And yet at the same time,
How
you
do you
don't
get to
wanna
come to it?
frustrate them,
Right,
Peggy.
exactly.
You don't wanna
Yep.
frustrate the
There's a line, and eventually, yes, they probably will have to check it at least. Because I don't know, sometimes you spell words the right way and they still look wrong. But that's, yeah, just the way it is.
Now we
So,
have spell
but yeah,
check. They
I
will
know. Well, I don't even have to do spell check. All of a sudden, Google just lets me know you spelled that word wrong.
Yep, I know.
So, yeah. So we had some questions come in from viewers ahead of the show.
Mhm.
And so I thought we'd go through some of those. The first one was, what's the best way to find a co-op? Do you have an answer to that one?
You know what? Yeah, so I would, you can Google it. You can Google co-ops in my area. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, what I've noticed is there are amazing websites for even co-ops, and there's
Yeah.
information you have to usually reach out through email. There's
Mm-hmm.
not always a phone number, but you have to do a little bit of work. Also through if you're into Facebook, if you're not into social media, I completely understand that, but they usually are.
Facebook is
Yeah, it
one of
is.
those places you're going to find
You're
lots
gonna
of groups, lots of field
Yeah,
trips, all those things. So even if you only create an account for that, it is. And Heidi St. John and I were talking about that last week too. It's just the place that homeschoolers are.
it
So,
is. It is. So
mhm.
that, and then of course, word of mouth, any other friends. But I really liked your idea about trying to maybe go visit it on your own or ask
Mm.
questions. And maybe even after this podcast, you could even, just do some of these things. Like, if they
Right.
don't have a questionnaire, have a little summary of a bio that you write up on your
Yeah.
child and you share,
Mhm.
this is a little bit about my child. And I just want you to
Right.
have an idea, put a photo on there or whatever. And you
Mhm.
don't have to put last names, just put their first name, and then just say, "I really just wondering if this is a space we could call home."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Starting the conversation. If they don't start it, you start it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Be
Yeah.
advocate for your child. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. So had Kate O asked the best way to keep special needs kids socialized while homeschooling. I know we've been talking a lot about co-ops,
Mhm,
but there are other ways
mhm.
to keep your kids socialized as well. But co-ops are just one of the many. And I think a lot of times when people start homeschooling, they're like, I got to get into a co-op. And then like right now, I've had many parents say, they're all closed for the year. What do I do?
Mm.
So this kind of answers that question. What do they do now?
I do have a suggestion with that because it was kind of my situation. Is I had a very good friend who also homeschooled her children. She had four, I had three, so that's like almost a baseball team.
Mhm.
And we would get together once a week and do art
Ah,
and
yeah.
history. And
Mhm.
we were doing like a classical approach, like a very informal kind of
Right.
laissez-faire classical approach. But we would do these art videos and then we would like do the art lesson together and things like that. And we would do field trips together. So even though it wasn't like a whole co-op,
Right.
that's how I started
You
actually. And
still
then
have
eventually it
community.
went to
Yeah.
co-ops. You could find one person, and even on a Facebook group, say, hey, I live in this area. Is there anyone who would want to get together, just meet at the park and play?
Absolutely.
That's a great thing to start with. And then, you guys all can bring snacks or an activity, things like that. So you can, and I just say, if you're going to the park, bring magnifying glasses and little tweezers where you can collect creatures and plant pods. And I'm a nature girl. So, anything where you can take it home and go, ooh, let's learn more about this flower,
Yeah. Keep that curiosity going. Definitely. Yeah. And yes, it does not take a whole classroom or, hundreds of people to create a community. And I've shared this story many times on the show is, I had 2 other families, and I would every time we moved to a new community, we've homeschooled in multiple places. And so I always had to find my people fast because I knew I needed the support. And so I would be the one, showing up for the first homeschool day going, okay, whose child actually accepts my kids, and could we have an invite for and create some sort of support, or at least have them over. So yeah, it's like mom dating, you're like, which family's mine?
That's so great. That's a great idea. Not everyone is that brave, but remember, you're your child's advocate. God created you to be the parent of that beautiful child, and no one can do that. Now, eventually, I know there's another question coming up that I'm pretty excited to answer, but just making those connections. And you can even get on a homeschool group in your area and say, does anybody want to start a co-op?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I'm sure there is somebody that's going to say yes, and
start small and just grow from there and learn. There's podcasts out there now that can teach you. I know one in particular that can teach you how to do it, and would love to come alongside and coach you to do that too. So
Yep. You see a need and you fill it, and that's how things happen. It's just how this happened, So you just never know where it's going to take you. One of the other questions was from Deborah, and she said, how do you handle bullying in a Christian homeschool co-op? We know what happens.
I love that question. First of all, and please forgive me if I'm hurting anybody's feelings. I don't even know what it means to be Christian. I mean, you can say you're a Christian. I could say I'm a Christian. We live a totally different life. I lived my life as a Christian for a very long time. And when I look back on it, I was like, was I a Christian? Like there's some things, I'm not proud of. And I'm like, that is not what I consider Christ follower lifestyle. So you cannot assume that everyone has the same heart for God that you have. Number one, never assume that. So I'll tell you right now, if you're walking in with expectations of this is not the world and it's going to be different and we're safe, you need to
everyone's a sinner in need of a savior.
Everyone's a sinner. Everyone's a sinner.
Yeah.
And I thought, because you showed me this question before, and I really thought about this. First of all, bullying is wrong. There's no room for it. There should never be any room for it. When a child is being bullied, usually they're being bullied by a child that was bullied.
Yeah.
And I used to say when I worked in the public school that teachers were the biggest bullies I ever met in my life. And that bullying began in the classroom. I know that's a huge statement. It's unfair for a lot of people, but I saw a lot of it. And it's why I walked away, actually. And I couldn't take it anymore. I was gonna act out on it, but it was rough. I'm like, these are my kids,
Right? Yes.
Chickens here. So how I would handle bullying in a Christian homeschool is, one, I would prepare my child the best I can. I would help them to be resilient humans of God, that they would know from the very earliest ages who they are, who they belong to. That they are the child of a living king, that they were created in the image of God. And there's going to be a lot of people out there who don't like it. Yeah. And you will be born into the enemy's world.
Yeah.
Born into
so true.
And you have to pick up your armor, and you have to, and I will say, mamas and daddies, your armor is prayer over that child.
Yeah.
Bullying will come, but it will also give you opportunities to speak life into your child, to help them be more resilient, and to have compassion for the child that is hurting them. Because that child was bullied, and God only knows what their story was, right? All of our stories matter, all of us.
Yeah, they all
And
play together.
yeah, but that was so just a sneak, because no one can fire me anymore. I used to do this in the public school. I would talk to little kids about, do you know who God is? And they would say, no. And I said, well, God made you, and God loves you, and he has a purpose for your life. And this was speaking life over children in horrific life. I don't even want to mention their stories here, but to what else could I give them?
Right. Yeah.
What else can we give our children?
And that's the most important thing we can give them, is that assurance. It's an assurance that this world is not it's not the end. And there's more. There's way more. So we had a couple questions about record keeping. One that was sent in previous to the show from Courtney was, how do you generate grades for a high school transcript? And then how do you calculate GPA? And I want to follow that up also with one of the comments from one of our viewers. She said, I'm having trouble recording my homeschooling. How do you document sporadic learning? So anyways, both of those, I think, the bigger question is, how do you grade? How do you, how do you keep track of stuff? And I'm pretty certain that, it's not the same for everybody, is it?
So, I have a school, and one of the things that we do, and this is really fun. I just was doing this with a little 7th grader the other day. Like, what do you think your grade should be? You know what you've done this whole semester. Right. What do you think your grade should be? And he gave me the grade, and I said, that sounds good. So I say, have the conversation with your child before the beginning of the year. Like, what grade do you want in this class? If we're studying math this year, what are you shooting for? Put it on that. Okay, I want an A. I want all A's. Okay, cool. What does an A look like?
Yes.
But just in case, what does a B look like? And honey, we don't go past C's. So what would you say a C would look like? Well, I would just do I wouldn't do the homework. I would just do the daily work. A B, I would do the homework, the daily work, and then some research on algebraic expressions. I don't know. And then, you guys discuss that. And then when that semester's over. So that's one way. That's the way we do it. That's the way. We are a private school. As far as record keeping and transcripts and records that you want to send off to colleges or whatever, understand that when if your kid is doing dual enrollment in high school with a college, you don't have to worry about transcripts and all that.
Right. It's already in there. Yeah.
But so you can create your own documents. I know that's one thing. You can also hire an organization like myself that creates the documents, that keeps them. Like, we have kids all the time years ago that went to Solimar I just had an email the other day. Hey, can you send my transcript over to this college? And this is 5 years later. Yeah. So, there's
even jobs will request them too. So when they've graduated from high school and come around again. Yep.
Yeah. There's some nice thing in having a little umbrella, somebody who's keeping watch for you, who's holding records, who's, especially like with dual enrollment, they're agreeing that you can take those courses, and they're signing off for you. I don't know how that works without that. And then what was the other question?
The GPA. And, of a lot of these, because I did all my own record keeping, and a lot of the free downloads, actually even on our high school page, if you download some of the free ones, the transcripts that we have on there, they calculate it for you. It's all built into the sheet. So that's super easy. Yeah, I know. So before we leave, though, you had an offer for our viewers, and I want to make sure that we share that.
Okay.
So what
Yeah.
is that?
So
And
Solimar Academy, I'm also a coach. Besides being the director and owner of that school, I'm also a coach, and I work with families who are just trying to understand their children a little bit better. How do they learn? How do they think? And trust me, they're all different, but you already know that. I have 3. And so I have an online assessment, and it is what it does is it gives you a self-portrait of your child. It is a dispositions, learning styles, interests, talents, with a whole bunch of strategies for how to teach that child. And today I'm just giving away 3 of them. So if you guys want those, and if once you send me your email, and your child's just their first name and what grade they're in, so I know how it's tailored. I'll send that to you. If you want some feedback from me after that, once you get the results instantly, you can have a conversation with me as well. Also, if your child can only do a few questions at a time, or you have to read them and you have to answer them, that's okay too on those.
okay. Yeah. And that email is dawnjacksoncoaching@gmail.com. And the first 3 people to email you there. So you better be watching live, because if you're listening to the podcast, I'm sure you probably already missed that.
Can I also say, you can also reach me at dawn@solimaracademy.com, because I'm like, I hope that's the right email. But see,
that's the one you sent me. So yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Very good. So yes. And we had one more mom. The mom that asked about record keeping, she said that was for records for the state. It's going to depend on what state you're in, as to what records you need to. Most states don't even require any records be produced for them. There's very few. But then you would either have an umbrella school like Dawn's talking about. Looks like my camera was unplugged here. Anyways, you can still hear me. But yes, so
in California. If you're, and I'm from California, so I also want to say about records, I know our time's running out, is that if you have to think about, what is the long-term goal? What is my long-term goal? Does this child want to go to college, junior college, whatever that is? If you're afraid because of the state, I would recommend hslda.org. and go on there, and you can find exactly what's required for your state. They're a great resource. I would say sign up with them. I don't know how much it is a year, but it's worth having them in your back pocket. And I could tell you stories that could make your hair stand up on the back of your head, of parents that have been through some scary stuff. One lady was chained to her kitchen table, and her child was taken for 7 days, all because the school didn't get the record that she was pulling him out of school. So they said he was truant, and they sent over social services, and that's how they treated her. So HSLDA, put that in your pocket. Their website's free. You can go in and look up your state and see exactly what you need for all of that record keeping.
Yeah. Yes. And even on our website, if you go into getting started, we'll send you directly to your state organization that can give you specific answers on what's required. So all of that's out there and broken down for you, and pretty understandable verbiage, instead of giving you the law and telling you to kind of try to figure it out. A lot of those organizations want to make sure you're following the law. They want to make sure that homeschooling stays legal. In Colorado, it's Homeschool Colorado. That would be the website to go to. And yeah, so I can quick find that. But thanks so much, Dawn, for this conversation. I think it has been really, really important to have, and yeah, it's I'm just praying, as we have these conversations more and more, that these resources would become more and more available to our families. I think my conversation last week with Heidi St. John, she said, if these resources and places were in place in every state, we wouldn't have people going back to the public school or saying, I just can't homeschool. There'd be more people saying, I want to homeschool because I have the support. I have what I need to make this successful. So
just last note, if I could say anything, don't do it alone. Don't try it alone. I tried it alone. It was a disaster. It was beautiful, but it was a beautiful disaster. some bad things came out of it. Please don't. Hire a coach. Talk to me. I'll talk to you for free. And I charge a lot. No, I don't. But you know what I mean? The profile, there is a charge, but not for you today. But just don't do it alone. Reach out to your community, talk to people, get to know people, because it's a lot and it can be overwhelming, but it's so possible.
It is.
Don't try to recreate the classroom in your home. It's never going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. Just be free.
And you really don't want it to.
Or you'd still be there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd still be there if it worked. I'd still be there, but
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Dawn. And we have some really exciting news coming up with SPED Homeschool. And Dawn is going to be part of that, but I'm not going to announce anything yet. But just to know that we have some things changing, and super excited about where God is leading that, just to give you some more variety and to really hit on some hard-hitting topics that we need to address as a community, and to give you the resources that you need, and the encouragement. And so just know that that's coming up on the show. Next week we are in. I'm sorry if you were waiting for this broadcast to be about boxes and going with your child's energy level. That got rescheduled. Actually, we haven't even set a date now for the reschedule. So that is coming up in the future. Just hasn't happened yet. But next week, we are going to be talking about science. Science at Home, a homeschool parent's guide to integrating STEM into everyday life. Making science like part of your life versus out of a school book. It is everywhere around you. And our guest has some great ways for you to be able to really be thinking about that. Thank you all for joining us and for joining the conversation. And yes, God bless to all of you. Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. And I look forward to hearing how those free consults go that you've given away. And thank you for providing that for our audience.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. All right. Yep. Take care, everybody. And we'll see you next week here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Bye.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.